If you haven't heard the news, DHGames kinda messed up this week with Natalia. We didn't really know how busted she was going to be until people started experimenting with her in Star Expedition. Check out this kind of lineup. Yeah, you've got here 5 carries and a Natalia achieving damage numbers which should be capable of someone like a Lord of Fear Aspen that's Giant Killer with a lot of sublimation on very highly upgraded Freya, Halora, Ignis heroes. We've got Olivia in there normally as well, Heartwatcher as well to try and rack up as much damage as possible. Mad how that kind of investment is completely wasted with the new release of Natalia. Now you might think to yourself, wow, does that mean I need to build Doppelganger Natalia because she's now the best Star Expedition hero? Well, today I'm going to be talking to you about why this needs to get banned, and it's probably not worth getting excited about. And by banned, I mean the devs will have to patch this because it is completely messed up in how it matches the Idle Heroes ethos. For starters, Doppelganger Natalia is just simply a support hero. She's got lots of great support effects which include buffs for the whole team. She can debuff opponents and replicate buffs and debuffs on both sides of the battlefield. On top of that, she's got some nice healing, excellent emergency skills through this passive here called Excellent Twins, and there's a lot of great abilities where she's helping your highest attack hero on your team. Unfortunately though, her basic attack has this unique trait of replicating attribute buffs on yourself to the allies with Bright Blessing. However, she gives herself Bright Blessing, so she's capable of replicating the buffs that already exist on herself. So ultimately, getting this basic attack to trigger is really, really nice. However, a lot of people at first thought, wait, that's not really going to happen in Star Expedition because basic attacks typically don't trigger in Star Expedition. One of the key strategies is to try and get active skills from your hero every single round. Well, that was until someone figured this nonsense out. The typical strategy in Star Expedition is to use COS. COS is allowing you to go ahead and get the set effect that removes control effects from your team and also gives you a buff. This is great because it removes the silence and the horrify on your team and therefore gives you a good chance of allowing your abilities to pop off. That also means that the first heroes to attack are free to move, and the boss that steals energy, if you have some energy feed on that lineup, well, it means that you get active skills all the time from your heroes. So if you can play around the control effects of opponents using the COS set and also put some lucky candy bars in to protect you against mid-round crowd control, you'll find your team does really well. However, there's another popular strategy, and that involves Osis. If you have 4 pieces of Osis gear, when anyone dies in battle, you increase all allies' attack by 10%, your holy damage by 10%, your all damage dealt by 10%, and your crit by 20%. Now, what you can do with Natalia is you can actually replicate these bonuses, as well as the fact that you can run 5 carries with her, which will die and resurrect continuously. Now, with those carries dying, you are gaining all of these buffs you can see on the screen. You're getting extra attack, holy damage, damage dealt, and crit. And this is a known strategy. People were using carries with their attackers, and we're having decent success. However, the COS strategy is so much better because it frees you from crowd control, and if you have good energy feed, allows you to do an active skill every round. However, Osis only gets active skills some rounds unless you can also put in some energy feed. But by putting in energy feed, you're running less carries, and therefore you're not allowing yourself to have that constant resurrection. Therefore, it becomes a sacrifice of damage for energy feed. Well, if you go ahead and use those 5 carries with Natalia, Natalia becomes the hero with Bright Blessing that's gaining the bonus. Therefore, the all damage dealt or holy damage buffs have a chance to be continuously replicated by Bright Blessing. And people have found that if that pops off, you can get yourself with an astronomical number of stacks of damage dealt that are just getting multiplied and multiplied and multiplied and multiplied every single time she does a basic attack. This gets to a point where Natalia is capable of dealing damage numbers unmatched in the game. In fact, I've seen strategies that can deal 50 quadrillion damage. That's 5.0 e to the 16. We've never seen heroes deal that much damage before on accounts that aren't running something like Sacrifice and a ton of S tiers and have massive Celestial Island stuff. And even then, that kind of number is just typically unachievable. The very fact that you can achieve that with a single hero and a bunch of carries is crazy. So the thing that's kind of blowing everyone's mind is the fact that this is a possible strat. However, there's one massive, massive problem. If you're a mega super whale, your carries actually run the risk of not dying. Because if you've spent tons and tons of money on the treasure train, like all of these bozos up here, you have so much HP on your carries from the treasure bonus that those carries physically cannot die to the boss in Star Expedition. That means you're not gaining that all damage dealt or that holy damage that you can then multiply with Natalie's basic. With that not being able to trigger, Natalie's basic is not as good, you're not getting that damage, and therefore her damage absolutely stinks. It won't even scratch into a point where you're even seeing numbers with an E next to them. You won't get E to the 14, E to the 15, or even E to the 16. So Natalia is actually terrible if you're a super uber giga whale. Another huge problem is that people like my guildmate Noah went out of their way to buy S-tier heroes like Halora or Freya to give them silence immunity so that they can run a better strategy in Star Expedition. The fact that they've gone and accidentally released Natalie with this ridiculous loopable exploit with the Osis abilities means that now we have a huge problem. It means that people who've invested in S-tiers or even giant killer heroes are getting matched, if not beaten, by people who are using Natalia. And that makes it absolutely crazy. So not only are whales being punished for having increased their treasure trains so high, you're getting people who've invested in S-tiers and giant killers getting punished because they can't compete with a single B-tier Natalia. And the answer to this might be, well, why doesn't everyone just run Natalia then? Well, we've already mentioned mega whales can't do that strat because their carries don't die, but the other problem you've got is that Osis doesn't just improve all damage dealt and holy damage. We've seen people try to replicate this strategy and absolutely fail. They find themselves just increasing their crit and they're like, oh, I'm not doing anything. I'm just getting more crit chance. And increasing your crit by 20% to then make it like 1,000,000% extra crit, it just means that you're guaranteed to crit. It doesn't matter if your crit's 100% or 200% or 1,000,000%. It's still a crit or not. It's a binary outcome. Whereas if it's all damage dealt that's multiplying, that gets ridiculous because that stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks. The same with holy damage. It's going to stack and stack and stack and stack. So if either of those buffs are getting replicated, that's absolutely fantastic for your Natalie. However, because there is a degree of randomness involved, it means that you could do one Natalie attack that's capable of doing what you'd normally do in just 5 whole attacks, and then you do another 3 attacks, and you get absolutely pants results. So given that entire degree of randomness, this strategy is awful because it means that any attempt of trying to have a good Star Expedition team is rendered potentially useless by Natalia, but also you're being punished by trying because you could also completely fail with the randomness. And also if you're a mega whale, any investment in the treasure train you've made could actually stop you from even letting your carries die to make this strategy work in the first place. Now, many of you might hear this and rejoice and say, hooray, free-to-play players can finally compete in Star Expedition. Yeah, but that's not good because if instead, by allowing this hero to exist, DHGames are alienating whales, their entire income stream becomes disenfranchised. The last time something this ridiculous happened in the game, it was the release of Valkyrie. Her abilities used to never last 1 round in these final passives here, dealing damage. See, 3% of Valkyrie's max HP for 1 round. That used to be 3 rounds, and that used to be a higher percentage bonus. Valkyrie was capable of absolutely shredding teams, and because her damage over time scaled with HP, you could massively invest her in HP. And this is a time before Purify or Unbending Will, and E3 was the highest you could get a hero, where all that did was actually just give you the ability that allows you to heal passively at the end of a round. Valkyrie loved this. She was dominatingly strong, and if you crowd controlled her, she punishes people anyway with that passive. And it just resulted in a hero that was able to destroy an entire lineup of E3 light and dark heroes, and people were really, really mad about this because it meant a free-to-play player who just had enough scrolls to get 7 copies and build an E3 Valkyrie were able to dominate in PvP against people who just couldn't get Valkyrie on day 1. And it resulted in a load of whales just complaining and quitting the game or threatening never to spend money ever again. And that meant that poor Valkyrie had to get nerfed to balance her to then make the game a lot more enjoyable for people. Now, some people see the nerf of heroes as a bad thing. It's not. If it's that degenerate for the game that it's causing one hero to demolish an entire lineup of thought and strategy, that's not good. And that's the same thing we're seeing here in Star Expedition, because Star Expedition is one of the most popular competitive game modes, especially across guilds, because it requires teamwork and synergy, working together, coming up with clever and interesting lineups, and maximizing the damage in every way you can. If that kind of strategy is made redundant by a completely random Natalie high roll with a bunch of carries and just Natalie, we've seen E copies of Natalie, D copies of Natalie, C copies of Natalie, and do quadrillions of damage. Stuff that you'd normally need a giant killer and mega sublimed heroes to do, and a big old train for a Heart Watcher. The fact that you can pop just a single Natalie in this and do that should not exist, because it completely takes a step back from progress. It doesn't encourage people to come up with creative teams. It doesn't add as an addition to what we already have. It doesn't encourage people to spend money or even invest in anything. It just basically says, hey, look, we accidentally built a degenerate hero who you can totally abuse. Now go crazy. So if you've heard all the hype around Natalia this week about how strong she is in Star Expedition, this is more than likely going to get patched within the next few weeks, if not days, of this being available. It definitely will not be possible next Star Expedition. The devs have been clear and aware of this and gone, yeah, this was not an intended game design. She's supposed to be a support hero, and we really encourage you to use her as such. Yes, I suppose for the remainder of Star Expedition, there will be people that continue to abuse her with a bunch of carries, but the people that can are people who have a decent enough treasure train, but not one that's so strong that you're just basically never able to kill your carries. For the majority of players, though, you probably will never get to experience how busted this is, so we may as well document it now in a video and tell you how nuts it is, because it will be something that unfortunately is not going to be available in the future once the devs do nerf it. That's not a bad thing, though. That's really healthy for the game, and being able to use Natalia as a support hero is the intended design. So yeah, you could use her as a first Transcendence hero alongside someone like Eloise. This passive is great for healing. She's got tons of ways of buffing your holy damage, your crit damage, nice things that will help out. Look, we've got a bit of damage reduction in there. Loads of great stuff to allow Eloise to perform well. Is that going to be better than Fairy Queen Vessa? Well, it depends on how people are able to test and see if there's any actual milestones Natalia can do after she's been nerfed. So there's a little bit of testing people will still need to do in the coming months. We'll keep you updated with that stuff. But right now, I still recommend Ayla as a Void 3 or Vessa as a Void 4. I've got videos about both of those if you wanted to build them alongside an Eloise. And then other strategies to put in Natalia would be when you've already established your lineup. Let's say you've got a Lord of Fear Aspen, Scarlet Queen Halora, and an Elena. Then you could add Natalia in, I suppose. Or maybe you've got a Mockman, Lord of Fear Aspen, and a Starwing Jara. Then maybe you want Natalia to help you out. Although I'd probably get Halora first, but there are arguments to try Natalia because she's new and she's fun. Either way, Natalia is broken at the moment, but it's just because of her basic attack's ability to replicate those buffs in Star Expedition, and it's because those buffs never end. They tried to make her balanced by allowing it to replicate the duration of the buff, but the fact that Osis has an infinite duration, it just means that it's super exploitable. So let me know what you think in the comments section. I'll be really happy when this gets nerfed because it's just degenerate for progress, but some of you might really like it. I don't know, but I thought I'd make a video about it either way. Let me know what you think. I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good week, and happy island.